Microsoft, just stop!
Microsoft has killed another Windows activation workaround.
The people have spoken. Microsoft, formerly known as Microsoft, must be dethroned from their absolute software monopoly. The sentence? A serious charge of slop. So I recently made a video trying out Windows 11 for the first time and wow, it was bad. Since making that video, my algorithm has been filled with videos like the one you saw in the intro. And reading the comments on my video also told me something rather disturbing. Namely that the US version of Windows 11 is even worse. This is just crazy. So in this video I want to talk about some of the key aspects in this rise of resistance against Windows and Microsoft. And I think a good place to start is the total disconnect between the people, that's the consumers, and the company. So criticizing Microsoft and Windows is not a new phenomenon at all, but to me it seems that this conflict has only exacerbated in the last few months. The best example I can think of in this regard is the, to put it mildly, controversial New Year's remarks by Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft. In the opening paragraph he writes, "As I reflect on the past year and look toward the one ahead, there's no question 2026 will be a pivotal year for AI. Yes, another one. Already the disconnect is on full display. AI is conceptualized as this inevitable part of a march for progress. A progress that nobody actually wants except for the shareholders perhaps." He builds on this idea in the final paragraph. There he talks of measure of progress and that AI can and likely will be, quote, "one of the most profound waves of computing yet," end quote. But he writes that, quote, "it will be a messy process of discovery, like all technology and product development always is." A messy process of discovery. Really? That's one serious euphemism for the environmental impact of AI, the outrageous rise in the cost of hardware, which we know by now is directly caused by AI. Also the flooding of the internet with AI slop and garbage, the people who fear that they may lose their jobs, and all of the data collected for larger AI models without consent from the original creators. I mean, AI is just not a garage science experiment that you mess with once in a while. No, those who are caught in this messy process are not Microsoft themselves, it's the consumers, you and me. Of course, the comment that has infuriated the internet the most is his comment on slop, when he writes, quote, "We need to get beyond the arguments of slop versus sophistication and develop a new equilibrium in terms of our theory of mind that accounts for human beings being equipped with these new cognitive amplifier tools as we relate to each other." So there's a few things to say about this. First, this binary of slop on the one hand and sophistication on the other comes off as quite patronizing. What he says essentially is that consumers are only thinking in black and white. That is a cognitive distortion that allows you only to think in extremes, as such being incapable of finding the shades of grey. Now, while there are probably a lot of people who think that AI is bad wholesale, and probably for good reasons as well, I think the majority of people is just unimpressed with how AI works today and how it's implemented. This disconnect between Microsoft and consumers is paralleled by a disconnect between theory and practice. When Nadella talks of the potentials of AI, he essentially talks of the theory or philosophy of AI. As a graduate student, I'm no stranger to academic or corporate word salad, which is what people really consider Nadella's notion of an equilibrium in terms of our theory of the mind that accounts for human beings equipped with these new cognitive amplifier tools as we rate. Wow! right? What cognitive amplifier tools refer to here is actually quite simple. We can think of AI as a hammer. It doesn't decide what to build, and it doesn't replace the craft. In skilled hands, it makes difficult work easier and more precise. In unskilled hands, however, it can do real damage. The thinking part in this metaphor still belongs to the human, you. Nadella uses the metaphor of a bicycle of the mind. And again, in this metaphor, it's you as a human who ride the bicycle, right? It's simply a tool for getting from point A to point B a bit faster. Super smart, right? What I think is a good example of this AI as a tool is the AI research assistant that my university has implemented. Prompting it precisely can help in the process of gathering literature for a larger project. Again, smart, right? Well, I still think there's a lot to be gained from chasing footnotes and references and reading literature that isn't necessarily relevant to your project directly. While this research may have a lot of potential, that is just not the case for how Microsoft has implemented AI into Windows. I don't really think people regard Copilot as a hammer or a bicycle. What I'm saying is that there's a disconnect between Nadella's theory or philosophy of AI and how it actually works in practice. Also, the metaphor of the bicycle is simply flawed. If you have a bicycle, you can still decide to walk or run or drive or take the train. This is just not the case in Windows. Copilot is not an add-on, it's not something additional that you can install. No, it's just there whether you want it or not. And it's not easy to get rid of either. So if you want to keep with the metaphor, you can essentially say that when you install Windows, your feet are chained to the pedals of the bike, and that bike is Copilot. And this is just not a good bike. An example of this is how Copilot is now integrated into the Windows file manager. People don't really like it. And I mean, there's a lot of other examples, but I want to summarize my points in this way. The backlash against Microsoft and Windows 11 comes from a growing disconnect between the company and its users, you and me. While Nadella talks about AI in these abstract and optimistic terms, people simply experience it as intrusive, badly implemented, and forced on them through tools exactly like Copilot. That is, there's a disconnect between theory and practice, a disconnect between consumer and company. Framing this criticism as slob versus sophistication feels patronizing, and it misses the point. Most users aren't necessarily anti-AI, they're just very unimpressed with how it works. AI could be a useful tool when it's optional and well designed, but in Windows 11 it's neither. This really highlights the gap between Microsoft's theory of AI and the reality that users are stuck with. Okay, that was just my short rant. I know this video is a bit different from what I usually make, but don't worry, you will see a lot more of the classic Foci content already next week. Thank you so much for watching, and I'm very much looking forward to reading and hearing about your opinions in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching, and a special thanks to Zeus and Justin, as well as the other members of the channel. You too can become a member of the channel, if it's financially responsible of you. Right now there are 2 tiers with different perks, but in addition to these, all members are invited to join a VIP channel in the Discord. Okay, bye.